Seven Deadly Sins was once viewed as the next classic generational anime. I'm not the kind of person to throw around the word classic lightly. A classic anime to me is one that will be watched and talked about for decades to come. And truthfully, I do think Seven Deadly Sins at one point in time was on this path, but these days Seven Deadly Sins is very much so not in that type of conversation anymore. It's a little weird to think about now, but a few years ago, Seven Deadly Sins stood tall next to the likes of My Hero Academia and Black Clover and Boruto, getting just as much and in some cases more praise than those respected series. Now, here in 2021, the series has concluded and there was a canon epilogue movie announced, and outside of the hardcore fans and some people who feel like they have committed too much time and energy to this series to outright abandon it, I'm not seeing too many people who actually care. But how do we get here? Well, that's what I want to look at in this video when we see what went wrong with Seven Deadly Sins. So we have two major things that led to the Seven Deadly Sins having this sort of negative aura surrounding it, and they both sort of in ways can be connected to one greater problem, but we can touch on that bit towards the end of the video. First, it makes sense to head to the most obvious issue Seven Deadly Sins had, one issue that most people know about even if they weren't fans of the anime, and it's honestly what a lot of people even know the anime for at this point, and that's the nosedive in animation quality it took around the midway point of the third season. So there are some people who say the animation was always bad, which isn't true. The people who say this go back to the first two seasons and usually take screenshots and screen captures of these weird in-between shots. So I'm gonna just put y'all on game real quick in case you didn't know this. Animation is cut up in frames. No matter how good, how quality, how big of a budget an animation has, if you pause the animation in the right weird in-between frame, you can make it look bad. That's why usually you shouldn't use a screenshot as an example of bad animation, because animation is when you're pressing play and it's playing at full speed and the characters or the animation is actually moving. And that's really just a bigger anime community problem as a whole, as some people don't know when to use the word art style instead of animation when they see a very interesting art style that they don't necessarily like. One example that instantly comes to mind is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. A lot of people say that the animation is weird, but they actually mean the art style is weird, not the animation. Moving back to the problems with Seven Deadly Sins though, if you don't know, the reason this complete tank and botching of the animation through Seven Deadly Sins' third season happened is because the original animation team that was working on Seven Deadly Sins suddenly dropped it and a new studio had to pick it up. Although that studio had an abundance of projects already on their hands, so they shifted it to another team that was sort of under their corporate umbrella. And I mean this no disrespect to third animation team, but that team doesn't really seem like they're the most talented team in the world when it comes to animating things, just looking at their track record, and that in combination with probably the great amount of stress they had due to time constraints, well, made this happen. This problem is a lot more layered to me than just having an anime that isn't easy on the eyes. See, many people, myself included, consider this part of Seven Deadly Sins to be its peak or right on the door of its peak. So that would mean this particular moment or this particular stretch of time where the animation was at its worst, the story in theory was at its best. And that's not to say that the first two seasons or the first three arcs weren't that good, because on the contrary, I think they were great. That just goes to say that this part of the story was just that supposedly amazing. So if you're the creator of a series and you obviously have the option, you don't want people to drop your series no matter what. But if you don't have an option and you can choose whether someone drops your series at the peak of its quality or at the bottom of its quality, you're more than likely gonna choose the bottom, and here's why. If someone abandons your series when it's at its worst, then you come along and present this new high quality, you have a chance of winning those fans back and maybe even earning some new ones. A perfect example of this is Boruto. Boruto for a very long time was deemed as just boring fiction, to be completely honest with you, but in these past few months at the time of this recording, it's earned a lot of those fans who originally dropped it back along with new fans. And again, best case scenario is they had never dropped the series to begin with, but this is the next best case scenario. But with 7 Deadly Sins, and I'm sure you can kind of piece together where I'm going with this, since so many people checked out of the series at its height, it didn't really give the series a chance to win those fans back, and it missed its great window of opportunity to make so many more new fans. During what was deemed as the highest point of your series, it was going viral on Twitter every week for all the wrong reasons. It's flat out trash animation. So this was opening the coffin for the death of this series, but my next point may have just pushed the series in and nailed it shut, because with that we transition into talking about the story itself. Now, I don't want to spoil anything in this video. I know I'm a weird guy and I watch these type of videos for anime I've never seen anyway, so there's a good chance there may be people who watch this video and have never seen the 7 Deadly Sins, and I don't really want to spoil it for you if there's even a small bit of you that really wants to check it out for yourself. But I will say this, to me personally, and I think a lot of other people, 7 Deadly Sins' biggest appeal was the characters and the story that each character had to unfold as the series progressed. Well, obviously this is a super power fantasy series. A lot of these characters' motivations and feelings felt truly based, and you can tell were given serious thought in their creation. When you first start 7 Deadly Sins, it seems like you're just watching a group of friends fight demons, but you soon go through all these different twists and turns, and you just realize that in the blink of an eye you have all these different kind of characters who all have different sets of emotions and characteristics, and none of them truly come across as generic protagonists or even generic antagonists. And I really think 7 Deadly Sins doesn't get enough praise in that respect. 7 Deadly Sins managed to walk a line that many great anime haven't really walked all that well. A while back I made a video that was titled How Naruto's Greatest Strength Became His Greatest Weakness, and if you haven't seen that video, in it I talk about how the greatest thing, or one of the greatest things about Naruto, was its super diverse and colorful cast, but that also came to hinder Naruto in the end because so many of those characters end up falling short of their true potential in the story. And the reality of it is, you end up dealing with this almost unsolvable equation, because the more great characters you introduce and pull and put in front of the audience, then the more the audience expects you to give those characters their own devoted time and actually flesh them out and go deeper on why we even love the character upon you introducing them to begin with. But if you get bogged down in this too much, you could end up with a super bloated story on your hand and telling 1,000 backstories and still leaving people unsatisfied, like in the case of Naruto. But I felt like 7 Deadly Sins did an excellent job of managing this, and it stayed the series' strength up until the end, in my personal opinion. It did a great job of introducing characters who felt quality enough to be main protagonists, but not so much so to the point where they got main protagonist screen time. And there's never too many moments while watching or reading 7 Deadly Sins that you feel like you're spending too much time with a certain character and you want to jump back to the quote-unquote main plot. Everything comes together great and feels like a nicely fitting puzzle. That is, until chapter 310. So like I said, I won't spoil anything because I know there may be people who watch this who again want to consume the story on their own, but I'll put it this way. In chapter 310, they do this thing where they fake out the ending of the series. I feel like that shouldn't be too much of a spoiler, because if you watch up until that point in the anime, or you read up until that point in the manga, context clues shows you that there's still more to watch. So they do this fake out ending thing and then go into this sort of weird gray area epilogue territory. Now, a lot of people just do not like about the last 50 chapters of this series, and I get why. I've done and redone this script a few times because I feel like if I'm talking about the downfall and what went wrong with Seven Deadly Sins, that kind of comes across as I'm going to present objective ideas, and for the most part I am trying to present objective ideas and reasoning, so I don't want to get too bogged down into the details and actually insert my own opinion, because I don't really want to come across as the guy who doesn't like how a story plays out and then says because I don't like it, it must be objectively bad. So to keep it short and sweet, I'll just put it this way. For 200 plus chapters, we spent time in this world with these characters, and it built up a certain tone and a certain style of writing. And when you reach this point in the series, for the most part, you feel as though everything's kind of concluded, at least character-wise. And if you remember, I just explained the character stories and the character arcs are kind of the best part of the series. Now, of course, the moment-to-moment action is great and it keeps you enthralled, but at the end of the day, Seven Deadly Sins is a series that focuses on characters, not so much big random events happening. So when this fake out happens, I think a lot of people were upset, not so much at the fake out, but more so that there was still a lot more left to this story. I can't speak for everyone, but me personally, once we reached this point in the series, I just wanted to see the Demon King, a character who they'd been hyping up literally since the beginning of the series, go into a giant climactic battle led by Meliodas and the Seven Deadly Sins, and I just wanted to see them like throw nukes at each other for a few panels. That's it. Maybe give Meliodas one last super satisfying full counter and then have our characters run off into the sunset. But that's not what we get, unfortunately. Seven Deadly Sins, in my opinion, seems to start to suffer from this problem where they try too hard to subvert expectations, because as I said, when you're about halfway into the first season of Seven Deadly Sins, you're like, oh wow, this is just a happy-go-lucky anime about friends on an adventure, and it's getting a little dark here and there with these action set pieces, but for the moment it's a nice battle and struggle of good and evil, and slowly as things unfold and motivations go on, you realize it's not that cut and dry. But I think by the time we reach this super weird point in the series, everyone really did just want the big payoff and it to end with the battle of good and evil. It seemed like everyone had picked their side. It seemed like all the characters had laid down the motivations, and whatever side they were on and whatever they had revealed about themselves, that was that. But Seven Deadly Sins starts dragging its feet, and it continues to unveil these weird backstories and continues to just bring up twist motivations, and it feels weird and unnecessary. And not to be too pessimistic, but that can lead me to the final sort of issue slash problem that I think may have played a part in what I'm speaking about now, and what I know for sure played a part in terms of the animation being bad, and that's money and success. So look, again, I don't want to be too pessimistic and hard on the creator of Seven Deadly Sins and make him or her, I actually have never taken the time to research the mangaka for Seven Deadly Sins, make them seem like they're this super greedy, money hungry person who is hell-bent on reaching the top and making their story last way too long. It genuinely could have just been a situation of they made the wrong turn and the story shouldn't have went in that direction according to fans. They did it and it happened. People make mistakes. People do things that fans don't really like all the time when they're writing. So it's whatever. But there's a small chance that the story dragged out because that person wanted the series to soak up and milk out a few more dollars. And that's very, very unfortunate. But for sure how money affected the bad animation isn't as clear as you may think. But when I say money affecting the animation, maybe the first thing that comes to your mind is, oh hey, maybe the series didn't have a big enough budget, but that's not the case. The original animation team for Seven Deadly Sins was a studio called A1, but a production team who goes by Aniplex bailed from the production after the creation of the Seven Deadly Sins Prisoner of the Sky movie failed to do big box office numbers that they expected it to. Then A1 Studios dropped the anime to focus on the two anime that they were already working on, and this is when Seven Deadly Sins not necessarily being at the level of a cash cow and Suits just kicking it to the side and literally treating it like crap really comes into full scale, because the two anime that they were trying to focus on while dropping Seven Deadly Sins were Sword Art Online and Fate Grand Order. If you know anything about these two anime, they get milked like a lot because they both make a lot of money. There are a lot of spin-offs and OVAs and light novels that exist for these two properties, and maybe Seven Deadly Sins not going in the direction of that and being cash cows for decades on end seemingly wasn't all that appealing to Aniplex or A1 Pictures. And after all that played out, that's how the new studio Dean, and then they shipped it off to the studio Marvy Jack, and just ended up getting the mess that we did. So spoiler alert, money is the root of all evil and corrupts another artistic creation. What else is new? It sucks that all this happened to Seven Deadly Sins, because I still think it's a really great series. It just stumbles and fumbles a little bit at the end, but all in all put together as one package, I think it's worth at least giving a try to see your own personal feelings on it, not just being spoon-fed ideas by random people on the internet like me. If you do want to try and you are curious, now that Seven Deadly Sins got its official anime release in the West, fully from season 3 onward, all those animation problems have been fixed and corrected. It was always kind of funny to me because when all those trends about the bad animation and stuff was happening, I was like, how are you people even watching this? Because I was under the guise that it was actually a Netflix original, not the shenanigans that Netflix pulls that I now know about. Probably need to do a video on that. There were a bunch of people in the West who were either and by the way, no shame, you do you, pirating the anime and dropped it, which if you were pirating the anime to begin with, that doesn't really have any impact on its numbers when you drop it. Or B, never even gave the new season a chance because they didn't give it the opportunity to get its real release in the West. That's just a funny thing to think about. I'm not trying to be on my moral high horse or anything, but give it a shot. If you haven't given it a shot, truly give it a shot. If you did drop it before season 3 was officially released in the West, you should still go watch it. Like I said, the animation is fixed. I'll probably put up a comparison on the screen now while I'm talking about this. It's fixed. They redid it, which just goes to show that it was really just massive time constraints probably, and already been busy with other projects. It was just messy, and it's a real unfortunate thing that an anime of this magnitude, well, I know it's not super high on everybody's mind these days, but in the prime of Seven Deadly Sins, such mainstream appeal, it got treated like any other average old anime, and that feels really silly and grimy and disgusting to me. But whatever, it is what it is. That's what went wrong with Seven Deadly Sins. And that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed, you know what I'm saying, go ahead and subscribe, man. Go ahead and subscribe, you know what I'm saying? Leave a little like, leave a comment on if you enjoyed Seven Deadly Sins or something like that. I don't know, it doesn't really matter. I make videos of this quality or better all the time. I am leaving. I hope y'all boys and girls are enjoying your spooky season.